and welcome to Off the Beaten Path. Known as the land of milk and honey, Punjab once cradled the Indus Valley civilization, and Rabindranath Tagore believed that this is where civilized man first walked the earth. But what does Punjab have to offer apart from makki ki roti and sarson ka saag? Plenty, as you'll discover if you travel along one of the oldest highways in the world, stopping now and then to sample Punjabi life firsthand. You see things vacationing on a motorcycle, said Robert Persig in Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, in a way that's completely different from any other. In a car, you're always in a compartment, and because you're used to it, everything you see through a car window is just more TV. On a cycle, the frame is gone. You're in the scene, not merely watching it. The whole experience is never removed from your immediate consciousness. It's a stone's throw away from the Himalayan foothills, was designed by a French architect and is divided into 47 neat blocks. Chandigarh may be a designer city which is greener and cleaner than most other Indian cities, but if you're a tourist, the sheer modernity of Chandigarh leaves you with very little to see, apart from lots of postmodern buildings. It takes a city several decades to develop a character of its own. Chandigarh is only 40 years old, but its citizens are already so proud and possessive of it that they believe that there's no place quite like this. You may not share their passion if you lose your way half a dozen times as I did. Every roundabout looks identical to the previous one, and often you're left wondering whether your imagination is playing tricks on you. Speaking of imagination, you only have to visit the 12-acre rock garden to see what one man's creativity led him to do. Nek Chand, the retired road inspector, was often confronted with large quantities of urban waste and set about putting it to good use. There's a lot to see, in fact so much to see that the walk through the garden can become tiring. If the rock garden hasn't tired you out, you can head for the artificial Sukhna Lake, a favorite recreation spot. On a good day, you can get a clear view of the Himalayan foothills from here. A day in Chandigarh and you feel you've seen all there is to see. I've already worked out the route I'm going to follow on my journey through Punjab, and I'm itching to hit the road. To be frank, I've never really been a motorcycle buff. Part of the reason for this journey is the novelty of the bike. Patiala is about 60 kilometers from Chandigarh. You'll get there pretty fast unless a pride of lions materializes out of nowhere and stops you dead in your tracks. If you think Asiatic lions are only found in Gir in Gujarat and Kuno in Madhya Pradesh, a visit to Chhatbir, 25 kilometers from Chandigarh on the Patiala road, will change your opinion. A dilapidated bus takes you on a lion safari through what is at best an overgrown garden, where you come across these sad animals. I say sad because they lack the majesty and spirit of wild lions. Besides, they look ill-fed and inbred, and they even prefer the tarred road to the wooded patches. But having said that, I doubt you'll see lions at such a close range anywhere else. They are literally within a paw's reach, if you know what I mean, and they're obviously used to whopping humans. If only they had more spirit. If those lions lack spirit, you're sure to find plenty of it in virtually every Punjabi you meet. Punjabis are a fiercely proud, practical and no-nonsense people. And the resilience they have comes from the fact that almost every invasion of the subcontinent was launched through Punjab. The constant exposure to danger over the centuries has strengthened their resolve and made them brave and optimistic. It has also given them the courage to rebuild their shattered lives every time it was necessary, without bitterness or rancor. Only this can explain how Punjab became one of India's most affluent states despite being severed during partition and seeing so much death and bloodshed. How else can you explain the bounce back to normalcy after a decade of terrorist violence? Patiala is not everybody's idea of a tourist destination, but there's a lot to see if you know where to look. 250 years ago, Baba Ala Singh laid the foundation of the magnificent Qila Mubarak here, which became the seat of the Maharajas of Patiala. The rulers of Patiala claimed descent from Rajasthan's Bharati kings, and that explains the curious amalgam of Rajasthani and Punjabi architecture. The courtyards, pavilions and domes are reminiscent of Rajasthani forts, whilst the doors and carvings are distinctly Punjabi. These paintings on the walls of the Sheesh Mahal depict Rajasthani and Pahadi art forms, which, like all other crafts of Patiala, have the influence of gold work on them. The summer palace of the Patiala kings was built about 150 years ago. There's also a small museum here that you can visit to get a feel of the history of the place. Maharaja Bhupinder Singh was Patiala's most famous ruler. His incredible height, 365 wives, one for each night of the year, and zest for life distinguished him from his more staid forefathers. One of the things he loved doing was hosting turban competitions. People descended on Patiala from all corners of Punjab to compete for fabulous prizes that the best tied turban would win. Many people say it's the turban that gives Sikh men their character. If that's true, the one activity that exemplifies Punjabi joie de vivre and exuberance is the bhangra. It's one of the oldest dances in the world, and its origin is linked to Shiva, the Lord of Destruction. They say his disciples were grinding marijuana or bhang, as it's known, when they grew intoxicated and began singing and dancing. From bhang, you get the word bhangra. Visit Punjab during the Baisakhi festival and you'll find entire villages dancing to the hypnotic beat of the drum. One activity that isn't restricted to the harvesting season is the art of pulkari making. Pulkari means flowering. In this case, it refers to creating floral patterns on cloth. The pulkari is an integral part of a Punjabi bride's attire.
Let me try this. साइज कैसा है? ये है जी खुस्सा बोलते हैं इसको पंजाबी के अंदर। ये टिपिकल पंजाबी शूज है, इसको पटियाला महाराजा पहनते थे जो पुराने हमारे थे।
It is at Sarhand that I'll be getting on to the longest, oldest and most famous highway in India, the Grand Trunk Road that stretches for 2,000 kilometers from Peshawar on the Afghanistan border to Calcutta. For centuries, men, goods and ideas traveled along this route before partition put an end to all that. Sarhand was one of the overnight halts for caravans on the GT road and the capital of the Pathan Sood dynasty. Until 1709, it was a rich Mughal city when clashes between the Mughals and Sikhs began. By 1763, it had been completely destroyed. But the city still has several indelible links with its past. Sarhand is also famous for the Gurudwara Fatehgarh Sahib, built at the site where Guru Gobind Singh's two young sons were bricked in alive between two narrow walls for refusing to embrace Islam. If you ever undertake a motorcycle journey, remember it's best to set your own steady pace. Riding too fast means you have to concentrate a lot, and that drains you. Besides, getting somewhere sooner rather than later implies the destination is more important than the journey, which it needn't be. Sights, sounds and smells can only be savoured at a leisurely pace. Don't hesitate to get off the main highway and lose yourself in the rural ambience. Who knows what you'll chance upon? Allow yourself conversations with rural folk and you may find yourself in Durgapur village, 2 hours away from Ludhiana, watching what you could never have dreamt possible. Bhim Singh may look like an ordinary villager to you, but he's incredibly strong and proved it in a few astonishing, though bizarre ways. This is what happened when a farmer tried to reverse a tractor into him. If that wasn't enough, he insisted that the tractor be driven over his back to show how little the tractor's overwhelming weight would affect him. He was more concerned about his shorts getting dirty than his vertebrae snapping. He made me wonder what he uses to relax his back afterwards, a Jeep or a Maruti 800. But Bhim Singh's repertoire of tricks wasn't over yet. His next act, a jaw-breaking exercise if there ever was one, only made him sweat a little. "60 years ago, Joginder Singh Grewal, a school teacher in a village near Ludhiana, started what he called was a rural sport competition. Since then, it's grown into a mass sports movement, and every year the Rural Olympics are still held in his village, where hundreds of villages compete for the top honours. Bhim Singh and other athletes in Durgapur village train 6 hours a day every day under the guidance of 65-year-old Taru Ram so that they can compete in the Rural Olympics. The Olympics are a test of skill, strength and sheer bravado, and because the prestige of individual villages weighs so heavily on the outcome, training brooks no compromise, as you can see.
पिता जी वो करता रहा जी ਬਾਬਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਕਰਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਜੀ, ਮੋਹਰੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਜੀ, ਅਸੀਂ ਮੋਹਰੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਿਖਾ ਲਿਆ ਜੀ। ਸਾਡੀ ਜਦ ਦੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਸਾਜੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਜਦ ਦੇ ਬਾਜੀਗਰ ਆ।
I left Durgapur wishing my bodybuilder friends had seen what I had seen. Sometimes it's lonely for a solitary biker. If you aren't a lone ranger, there are companies in Delhi that organize motorcycle expeditions for groups. The cost per person includes motorcycle, fuel, food and lodging. But then again, it might just be too organized for you. What I would advise is a group of friends, a few bikes, plenty of time to spare and no fixed itinerary. Hoshiarpur wasn't originally on my route, but I made a detour to visit a friend whose father owns orchards in the area. At his farmhouse, I got more than a whiff of that legendary Punjabi hospitality. Apparently, tandoori food isn't authentic Punjabi cuisine. It's an import from over the Hindu Kush mountains and was introduced into India by nomadic tribes. Kushwant and his father Bhagwant had prevailed upon me to spend a day with them. I accepted quite gladly to give my back and legs a rest and to see how green the grass was on Kushwant's side of the fence.
What is the turnover of the orchards here?
About 50,000 rupees per acre is the gross
Okay.
income from the well-maintained orchard.
Yeah.
And about 20,000 rupees per acre is the expenditure per year.
Before I dropped into Kushwant's farm, I didn't believe it was possible to actually take a horse for a walk. But Foley is incredibly docile, loves eating glucose biscuits and follows you around like a lamb. And like Mary's little lamb, her 7-month-old foal Envy refuses to let her out of his sight. It's the phenomenal capacity for hard work, no matter what their caste, that makes Punjabis one of the most successful communities in the world. It's no wonder that Punjab contributes the maximum share to India's wheat and rice stocks and has the highest per capita income in the country. The relaxed, unhurried lifestyle of Kushwant's family seems to have a certain magical, dreamlike quality. They are relatively well-to-do, but their well-to-do-ness seems quite unlike that of an affluent family in a city. But then, the grass is always greener, if you know what I mean.
Are you sure that the eyes are supposed to be covered?
I can feel brain flow to the brain, blood flow to the brain, disappearing. How does it look?
Land. Good. Now feel the power.
Yes. There's no mush to twirl, no beard to stroke.
Speaking of turbans, you've got to see the ones Nihang Sikhs wear. They rise a foot above their heads and give their wearers a formidable appearance. Nihangs are a martial Sikh sect. Their history dates back to when they aggressively resisted Mughal advance and fought to protect their faith. Today, hundreds of years later, they train with the same fervor and passion. Only now, they raise their weapons to protect the weak and to arbitrate in global disputes. To maintain the purity of their sect and their identity, the Hangs are always dressed in blue. Contrary to their demeanor, they are warm, friendly, and immensely hospitable. Watching them train under the hawk-like gaze of their leader Baba Nihal Singh can be mesmerizing. The mood was electric. It was like witnessing medieval knights testing their prowess against each other and being caught in a time warp. I felt the same way when I rode into Kapurthala and found myself looking at an authentic Moorish mosque. This building, a replica of one of Morocco's mosques, was built by a Sikh ruler for his Muslim subjects. Until partition, a huge crowd congregated here on Fridays. People still offer namaz here, but not in large numbers. If you have the time, inclination and energy, climb the 700-odd steps to the top of one of the towers for a splendid view of the city. The rulers of Kapurthala seemed strangely eclectic as far as architecture goes. The main palace in the city is an identical copy of France's Versailles Palace. Unfortunately, tourists aren't permitted there because the Ministry of Defense runs a school on the premises. Most Sikh Maharajas were bound by treaties of friendship to the British Crown. This perhaps explains why many foundation stones for royal buildings were laid by British Army commanders. So you have French-style structures executed by British architects and inaugurated by British generals, a queer amalgam that makes Kapurthala ever so fascinating. They say the best time to visit Punjab is during the winter months, when the green fields turn a resplendent yellow. But the monsoons are not a bad time either. The mood is festive and the weather pleasant. If you're lucky, you might just get to see adolescent girls celebrating Tiyas, which is closely associated with the rain. Tiyas is a festival of daughters and is a rapidly fading custom. For centuries, Amritsar has been the gateway to India for travelers from Central Asia. Today, it's very much the spiritual, strategic and commercial hub of Punjab. Amritsar literally means pool of nectar, which refers to the sacred tank around which the Golden Temple is built. Destroyed in 1761 and rebuilt in 1764, it had its roof covered with copper plates in 1802. And that's how the golden appendage stuck. This is the holiest shrine of the Sikh religion, built in a fusion of Hindu and Muslim architectural styles. The dome, which now has 100 kgs of pure gold worked into it, is meant to be an inverted lotus and symbolizes Sikh concerns with problems of the world. A 5-minute walk from the temple is the infamous Jallianwala Bagh, where over 200 unarmed men, women and children who had gathered to protest British policies were massacred on April 13, 1919. "77 years after the incident, you'll still find yourself overcome with emotion as you walk around. If you're mobile and have nothing to do in the evening, try to make it to the India-Pakistan border at the stroke of 7 in summer and 6 in winter. It's worth the journey, if only to see the mock seriousness and controlled aggression with which Indian soldiers and their Pakistani counterparts pull down their respective flags at dusk.
राष्ट्रीय ध्वज उतारने की अनुमति चाहता हूं श्रीमान।
Despite the brinkmanship and bravado, the synchronized movements of the border guards are a treat to behold. Every evening, the routine is repeated, so precisely that you're convinced that the Pakistani Rangers and Border Security Force practice together in secret to perfect their moves and timing. Once the ceremony is over, crowds on both sides surge towards the gates and wave and smile hesitantly at each other, showing that time and politics haven't erased the deep bonds that still exist between the two countries. As you walk along your side of the border, you come across a large stone tablet through which the international border runs. This is where people love taking photographs to show that they actually stepped across the line. The atmosphere of camaraderie and casualness is infectious. Lahore is as far from here as Amritsar is. This was an open road once. The scars of partition, the 3 wars and mutual distrust have made it impossible for Indians and Pakistanis to cross the border freely. For how long, I wonder? How long before bikers like me can rev up and ride through the barrier and be in Lahore in an hour, seeing the sights, tasting the food and making friends?